recreation work we've had, and then I had opportunities when I was down to Geneva to influence people.
Yeah, you really did.
There was,
and you made a big influence on a lot of people.
yeah, there were people that, well, when we'd have, now should I go into this? When we'd have parties down and the at the secretaries' meetings and the bosses' night and places like that, there was always one bowl of punch and a bowl that had liquor in it. And the ones that wanted any liquor would take it, and the ones that there were not too many of us that just had a glass of punch. And one day, one night, there was a big crowd, and some of them were watching, and I didn't realize anyone was watching, but they were they spiked the punch, and they wanted to spike both bowls, and Hank wouldn't, or Hewish wouldn't let him. So when I went over to get a bowl of, get a glass of punch, he said they were watching me. They were all watching me to see if I would take it, because nearly all of the girls had the other punch, had the spike punch. And when I didn't, he came over and said, "Eileen, if you'd have taken that drink, if you'd have taken punch out of that bowl, it would have shattered my face." He said, I knew that, and I told some of the others, I said, "Eileen won't touch it." And he said, if I had touched it, it'd have been a sad mark on a whole bunch of them, because they'd have just laughed and had a good time. And he said that would have really shattered my faith. So I've had chances like that. And I was always active in the secretaries' organizations, and we had Christmas parties and that kind of thing that I always had an opportunity if we hadn't have had the gospel and known that it made a difference in how people judged you and what you thought about you.
Now we'll show some pictures of that later on in your life.
Yeah, I can show that, but maybe I'll skip it. Anyway, you want to shut it off a minute so we get...
No. Have you told us all you want to about the patriarchal blessings? Or was there more about Pappy's that you wanted to tell us?
No, I think as far... I've pretty well covered Paps. I don't remember so much about Earls other than that I thought he was described better in my patriarchal blessing than he was.
Okay.
And other than that, both of us, he said, would have a mission and bring, and that we'd both be have a place in the celestial kingdom.
Okay, now when you were out in Panguitch too, you went on a camping trip.
No, that was out in Roosevelt.
I mean Roosevelt, yeah, on a camping trip, and took some food to cook that you wanted to.
I was, and I can't think what we called the girls in the.
It was the oldest group of girls that would be the Laurels now.
It'd be comparable to the Laurels now, but I don't know. I can't think what we called them. And the girls were.
You were their leader.
I was the leader, but they were very much younger than I was, and we went out on it for a picnic. We all rode our horses, and we took some food and sandwiches, and we took things to roast and heat up in the bonfire, and we made the bonfire. And I had a can of tomatoes, and whether they were bulged or a little bit or not, I don't know. But I heated the tomatoes in the fire, and then I don't suppose I'd know enough about poisoning if they opened it up. If it made a noise when I opened it, I wouldn't know it. But I opened the can and ate the tomatoes from the can. And before we got through at that party, or that picnic, and I was on our way home, and I took deathly sick. I got ptomaine poisoning. And before, that was after Mother and Dad had moved to Provo, because when I was down to Mrs. Archer's.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a horse. I had my horse there. I got on. I knew I started to get sick before we started home. But I got on the horse, and I was just deathly sick all the way home. I couldn't sit up. I just laid down over on his neck, and I guess spilled all the way down on it. Hi.
Hi.
And when I got home, when I got to Orser's, Mrs. Orser recognized, she says, "You've got poisoning." And she, every 15 minutes, she gave me some kind of poison to make me throw.
Must have been Epicac.
It could have been. And I thought it was calomel, but it wouldn't be calomel, would it?
Not calamine, no, because that coats the stomach. You take that after.
So she gave me this Epicac to make it every 15 minutes until I didn't think I could throw up anymore. I thought I was drained to the... And then she gave me a bottle of castor oil on top of it. But I pulled through it. But I remember that. That's one of the sickest times I've ever been in my life.
Well, no wonder you're so plucky.
Oh, boy. Well,
Let's see, what is it? Everyone down around the plant, well, she's a spunky little gal. She's got lots of spunk. She'll pull through.
well, I guess
You learned hard from early days, didn't you?
yeah, I learned. I guess that's spunk, and that's what Marilyn calls me. My spunky.
Spunky little grandma.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we got you up to where you've gone up to Provo to live with Grandma and Grandpa then, because you told us about the.
Oh, you mean?
You told us about the Indian coming into the store, and so they got you out of there in a hurry. So, and you had just gone up to Provo to live with Grandma and Grandpa.
No, I told you about that guy writing me that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when Mother got upset.
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Orsher got upset, and they decided I should come home. Well, Bob, let's get Bob's dinner. And
Okay, you're on.
am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
You want my frog face?
No, I don't want your frog face. We're gonna go into love, courtship, and marriage now. We gotta get her in a jovial mood.
Yeah, I gotta get out of this heavy feeling. Okay. Well, I told you about Earl walking from Leland up to the old interurban, and that was down on about 6th, 7th South and University Avenue in Provo. And then he walked from Leland up to the Spanish Fork, and caught the train. Then he rode from Spanish Fork to Provo on the train, and then he walked from the Provo up to where my folks lived, and that was just a little bit south and almost south of where the Alpha Provo Temple now stands. It's about it's a good 3
now
miles.
you can tell me the story.
Huh?
Now you can tell me the story.
Now, did you have that cat on or off?
No, it's on.
But was it on when I was getting?
Uh-huh.
Hey, we don't want this stuff in it. Turn it off.
Go on.
Go back a little bit.
You're doing fine. Go on.
Well, so anyway, that was the first, and then he walked out to see me out up at the Sawaya farm. And I told you about that, so I went to the BYU a little bit. I must more just audited classes because the folks needed the money and I needed to get a job. And although a purpose in leaving Roosevelt and going out to Provo was so that we could get a better education. It was Depression time too, and we didn't have any money to go on. So I needed to get a job until my mother and dad, or my dad could get a job, or we could get something going better. And so I got a job down at the Smooth Lumber Company, and that was down on 6th South and University Avenue.
Yeah, that's just right there by the viaduct, isn't it?
Yes, right by the viaduct, just south of the viaduct.
Mm-hmm.
And I was bookkeeper down there and typist. I got $70 a month.
That's a pretty good wage in those days.
Well, that was a far cry from the first $5 I ever earned and worked a month for. But anyway, we had whenever I'd come down to Provo, I'd have to ride my horse down, and my mother had a half-sister, Aunt Rosetta Fulmer, that lived out around 3rd East. I don't remember her address exactly, but she was up around someplace on 3rd East and 3rd or 4th North, up in there. And I'd ride my horse down to her place and change my clothes and go down to Smooth Lumber to work. And I do the same thing as when I went up to the Y. But I spent all the time I could up to the Y taking a class here and there and trying to get a little bit oriented so I'd know what I wanted to do and what I could take. I met several fellows up there that kind of pushed me for dates, but I never dated any of them. And so one day Earl played in the city band. He was the lead trombonist in the city band. He'd had that position all the way through high school, and he invited me to go over to the Spanish Fork to meet his folks and have dinner and go to the concert band and listen to it on Sunday afternoon. And as I remember, the day was these folks I felt comfortable with them. But and Earl had a little sister Vera that was just big enough to carry the trombone. And we played quite a little bit with his sister Vera and his sister Nora. And then when 2 o'clock we went up to the band concert. And Earl's mother went with us. And they had bleachers out in the park. And there were several sets of bleachers, and they were just kind of scattered around out in the pine trees. So it'd be more convenient to listen, or to sit around and listen to the concert. And the concert just got started, and one of the fellows that had been asking me for dates around the Y came over, and he started to flirt and make quite a scene about trying to he wanted to get a little attention and wanted to give me all the attention he could. I think he was trying to get Earl's ire, and he pretty well did. He got him upset. But I was sitting by Mrs. Beck, Grandma Beck, and he was sitting on the other side of me, and I guess it kind of bothered Grandma Beck, and I know it did some of Earl's relatives, one of his uncles especially. And so after the concert was over, Earl stood back by one of the trees. He didn't know whether he had a date or whether he didn't. So I told Ernie to get lost. I was going over and talk to Earl. And
Get lost, Ernie.
yeah. In the meantime, one of Earl's uncles had observed the way Ernie was flirting, and I guess I was flirting back with him. I'm quite sure I was. And so while after the concert, one of them, Earl's uncle, told Grandma Beck, he said, "You better break that match up in a hurry." He says, "Earl's going to get his wings burning just right good." And so the Becks weren't too hot about Earl getting married then. And of course, they kind of figured that he had an obligation. He'd been going with Anna, and they kind of figured that with Earl and me, it was just a blowover, and then Earl would get back and take Anna again. But I was about I made up my mind that she wasn't gonna have him, and I guess I didn't let anything like that bother me. Oh, now, where do
I found a picture of the band. You find there? Mm-hmm. So let me zoom in on it.
Well, Earl was, Spanish Fork had a real good city band. Earl was first trombone. He played first trombone all the way through high school and then through college. He played his trombone and had it in dance bands while he was in college. He earned some of his money playing in the bands, in dance bands with his trombone. Of the time that he spent in the band down there, and he's always been proud of the concerts they put on, and whenever we go down Spanish Fork, the last few years even, he'd mentioned that old pavilion brought back fond memories, and he had the highest regard for the fellows that were in the band, and for the band leader. I can't think of his name now.
Now show us on the picture which one's Pappy.
Which one's Pappy?
The tall one right in the middle.
Oh, yes, he's right. He's right in the middle. And as the tallest one there, he's holding a trombone.
There, yeah.
You see it?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah. That was one of the fond memories for him. Holt. Mr. Holt was his teacher.
Was band director, huh?
Shut it off a minute.
Now, do you want to tell us any more about your courtship?
Well, our courtship was really not anything to get excited about. It seemed like we had ups and downs.
Kind of long distance, wasn't it, with him at Spanish Fork and then out to Roosevelt and you in Provo?
Yeah, we never really had any place where you could have. I don't remember of ever even going to a day to BYU dance in Provo with Earl. I went to a BYU dance with several other guys, but I don't remember ever going with Earl.
I saw some pictures of you on horseback rides and
Yeah, we did a
groups
lot
of you going like that. You did some of that. Was that before you were married or?
Well, yes, it was before we were married, because Earl didn't have a horse when we came to Provo. I had a horse, but he, they just had work horses down on their farm. So we didn't have any horseback rides. But outside of, Earl came back to BYU and got his graduation. He didn't.
Now you've got a graduation picture there.
Well, have I got it in here? Hold it. Turn it off a minute then. When Earl came back from Roosevelt, he went out there on a teaching certificate, and when he came back, he got he graduated from the BYU, and this is his cap and gown and their ceremony. They had a nice dinner and ceremony, and then he must have taken some classes because he was over to the Y most of the summer. But I could only be up there part of the time, and this Afton Carroll that taught school and lived at Orchard's had a room and boarded. She went to summer school. She came out and went to summer school that summer, and Axel Birch came out and went to summer school. And so if I didn't stay, I don't remember ever staying with my Aunt Rosetta Fulmer, but I went to her place and changed my clothes and left my horse. And the days that I'd come down and stay and go to school and stay at Adelman's with Afton, I don't know how I got down. I don't know how I got down from the farm. I don't ever remember walking down. But I stayed there quite a few nights. And when there was something we wanted to do, I don't remember having any particular dates with Earl. I did have some dates because he came over to Adelman's several times, and I met him and I'd meet him at the Y and then come down and go to Adelman's and stay with Afton. So, but then when my folks moved down to Provo in the 1st of September, and we moved into that great big home on 287 East 2nd North. I'm not sure whose place that was, but it was a great big old home with several. There must have been a half a dozen bedrooms because mother had boarders, and she tried taking students, girl students, and that didn't work out. So she only kept them for a month or two, And then she got regular boarders, men boarders worked and took their lunch, and that worked out a lot better for them. But what I was going to say, we did have Earl came over to Mother's. I remember him coming to Mother's to my place when we lived on 287 East 2nd North, and but he went down to Louvain to teach school that same fall. That was in 1922.
Now go back. You were telling us about his graduation. And you got a story there that you don't want to tell us, but I want you to tell us.
I don't think it's... I don't hardly want to.
You want me to tell it? She's afraid that it makes her sound like a flirt or something.
Yeah, it makes me sound like... It makes Pap sound kind of cheap, too.
No, it doesn't either.
Well, I'll tell you what it was.
It just shows the humanness in all of you.
Pap,
and it made up Pat's mind in a hurry.
Pap, Earl invited me to go to the graduation, to go to his graduation dinner, and the dinner and the dance. And I was thrilled to death, and I got all dressed up and came down to stay I brought my best clothes down and came down to stay with Afton at Adelman's. And she'd let me stay there for $1 a night if I'd tell her I was coming. And so I made arrangements with Mrs. Adelman to stay, and I brought my best dress down. I brought the dress down that Earl liked the best, the white pleated skirt with this red silk jersey blouse. And Earl really liked that outfit. And the night, or in the afternoon, and that the dance and the banquet and the dance were supposed to be. Earl met me in the hall, in one of the BYU halls, and he said his mother and father weren't very happy about him inviting me to go to his graduation dinner. He said they felt like he'd gone to school with Anna and they'd gone with her all the time, and they felt that he owed it to her to take her to the graduation dinner. And I think she was graduating that night too. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, they said they felt like he should invite Anna instead of me, who was a comparative stranger. So he said, would I feel all right about it? And I said, sure. You go ahead and enjoy the dance and enjoy the dinner. He says, what do you do? And I said, well, I brought my clothes in to stay to the dance. And I've got an offer for a date if I want to take it. So you go to the dance, or you go to your dinner, and I'll go to the dance, and we will just have a good time, and you have a good time. Well, Earl went to the dinner, and I don't remember whether I danced with him that night or not, but I know I had fun with the dance, and I had a good. There was a guy that told Afton that he said, "I'll buy you a bar if you'll tell me when Eileen has a night that I can get a date." And so Afton said, "Well," she told this kid, and she says, "I'll collect on my bar tonight." She says, "Eileen needs a date." And so I went with that kid, but I didn't have any fun. I had fun dancing, but I didn't have any fun with him. I never went with him again. And Earl never went with that again either.
Yeah, now see, there's a moral to that story.
Yeah.
That
That's
really.
it. I didn't want to tell you that because it sounds like we were both being a little bit.
No, Pappy was always quite a mediator, and he would never let any of us break a date. So it really surprises me that he'd let Grandma talk him into it to break a date.
Yeah.
But Grandma Beck had quite a strong personality.
Grandma had quite a strong personality, and she had pressure from the neighbors. They lived neighbors to Anna, and she had pressure from Anna's mother. And I'm sure she had plenty of pressure on her that Earl should take Anna to the banquet. So that's the way it went, and that's the way. One thing that kind of made a turning point for both of us. I don't think we ever dated anyone else after that. I'm sure we didn't.
Kind of cinched both of your minds.
Yeah, neither one of us dated anyone after
That has quite a moral to it.
But
We need to know these things.
well,
All right, now on with your.
Earl went down to. I had a job down at Smooth Lumber, and so I wasn't going up around the Y as much either. And we had when we first took Mildred's, we had a bunch of Y students hanging around there, but mainly girls. And then there's one or two of Mother's sister's kids that lived there, and especially Cal Straw used to come around a lot. And he brought kids around, brought friends around. So we got acquainted quite fast in Provo and had things were interesting. But I went down to Smoot Lumber, and in the 1st of September, Earl took a job down in Juab County, down in Levan. And at the time that he went down there, Levan was about, it was a pretty good sized town. It was at least 2,000 or 3,000. And they had they had the junior at this high school, or I mean the grade school, and they had the grade school and 2 grades, the 2 grades of like we call junior high now. It's like having a junior high. And Earl was principal, and he never tried to put on an opera in Roosevelt, but when he went down to Levan, he organized a band, and he organized the school kids that were in a band, and he brought in the community people that had the instruments, and he brought some of the students from Nephi over. So he had a real good band down there, and he put on an operetta, and he used some town people and some on the main roles. He used the town people and 1 or 2 students. I'm not sure that he used any students. No, he didn't use any students from Nephi. But he used students in the band from Nephi, and he used town people. He used some of the town people. There was one person in particular that had a real good voice, and he used him on the lead in the operetta. I can't remember what the operetta was that he put on. Well, in Pleasant Grove.
Okay. This is the band then.
Yeah, this is the little community band that he had in Levan, and there was some of those kids have been friends with us all our lives. We had a real good relationship with them, and and I can't remember the operetta that he did, but when he came down, let's see, he came down in September. He was down until Christmas, but it was at Christmas when we got married. I'm messing things up.
So he went down to Louvain to teach school after
Yes.
he graduated.
Yes, and what I'm trying to say is that Louvain is almost just a dot on the map now, but when we were down there, when Earl was down there, it was quite a thriving little place, and he was principal, and he also taught the 6th grade, and he taught all the music that they had down there, and so we.
And you were still working in Provo.
I was in Provo, and he came up at Thanksgiving time. We were riding then. We were riding all the time back and forth, and then he caught the train and came up several weekends. And one day, I remember once at the UEA, he asked. We rode up to I rode up to Salt Lake with him to UEA. Never stayed overnight, so I don't know what happened there. We must have just
went up and back in the
we
day.
must have gone up and back the same day, same night. But while we were at the UEA, we went up on top of Hotel Utah, and that was when Hotel Utah, when they had the
Balcony out
the
around.
balcony all the way around. You could go up on the top floor and look around and see all of Salt Lake, and you could see all over town. And yet it was the most beautiful view of the temple. The temple was right. There wasn't, all of the buildings didn't obstruct it like they do now, but we were up on the Hotel Utah on the balcony on the 6th floor, looking over, and Earl said, how would you like to go through the temple with me? Through there. Salt Lake Temple. He just pointed over. He said, how would you like to go through there with me? And I said, okay. So that's all we said. There was no more. There were no plans made. Nothing more said about it. So
Okay.
It's okay. Okay. So when Earl came up at Thanksgiving time, he called me when he got into town. He was in Provo, and he called me down to Smoot Lumber time at lunchtime, and he said, "Can you meet me a couple of blocks up the street?" He said, "I'll start walking." He says, "I'm on Center Street." He says, "I'll start walking from here, and you start walking from the Smoot Lumber Company down on 6th South, and I'll meet you in the middle of that block, or we'll meet on the block there." So I started to walk and met Earl. I don't remember any particular people being around. I don't remember any place to go sit down. Just right on Main Street or on University Avenue, he pulled a box out of his pocket and he had a ring in it.
Most romance.
No romance at all. He had a ring in it. And he said, "Would you like to wear this for me?" And so I stuck out my hand. I'm sure he didn't kiss me. I didn't kiss him. We were out on the middle of Main Street.
Oh, gee, you two.
So I took his ring. I went back to the work and got back on my lunch period. I only had I had an hour, and time I walked 2 or 3 blocks each way. I didn't have very much time, and
Were you walking on air? Or was it just a matter of fact?
No, I think I was pretty well thrilled. I think one or two of them recognized it down there because one of them said to me, what you all flushed about? And I showed I showed one or two of the guys down there then my ring, and the manager, or one of them said to me, you promised to stay for at least a year when we gave you a job. And I said, well, this is just engagement. And when I took it home and showed Mother, she was quite happy about it. My dad wasn't there then, and so Mother was quite happy about it. But Wally was most unhappy. He started to bawl. And so I guess Earl came over that night. I don't remember. I don't remember him coming, having a date or anything after he was up there. But he was there that was on Saturday or Friday of the Thanksgiving time. And then after he got back down to school, he had this operetta going pretty good. And he called me one night from Levan, and he said, can we get married on the 20th? And I kind of gasped. That was kind of quick. And I said, well, I guess I can if we can get a recommend and I can get ready. So he said, well, I'll meet you in Provo then. And in the meantime, I went ahead and we got my recommend. And Mother went with me to get a recommend. And I guess Earl had to be there. He did. He had to be there when we got our license, because we had to get a license.
Yeah.
And so that's when we decided that he wouldn't be back out, because he had this operetta going, and he said he couldn't come back up and before the 20th. If we were going to get married on the 20th, I just have to meet him down at the depot. So my brother Wally, we still had a horse in. I think they sold the team, but we had one of the horses left. My brother Wally hooked the horse up onto the buggy and took me down to the depot. And it was at night. It was about 7 o'clock at night, and I didn't know whether Earl would be on the train or not. And I couldn't wait to see if he was on the train, so I had to get my ticket. I got my ticket, and Wally put me on the train, put my baggage on, and I got my ticket, and he got my baggage all out for me, and he got me on the train, and then I walked through, and Earl they started to come back then, so I saw Earl on the train, so he knew that I was on, that he didn't need to wait for me, that Earl was on the train. And we went to Salt Lake. That was the night of the 19th of December. And we went to Salt Lake. We stayed at Hotel Utah. We got double rooms. We got a room with that was one room, and then and joined, so that I'd feel better about it. And then we got turn it off a minute. So we got up at we had to be in the temple at 6 o'clock in the morning, and so we got. I know we didn't have any breakfast. we just got up and went over to the temple. We wanted to fast anyway to go to the temple, and so we didn't have any breakfast. And we got over there. We got dressed, and we were the first ones back up into the chapel where they had a little meeting before you went to the temple. They went down
through the ceremony.
Yeah, and while we were in there, Earl discovered that he'd left his ring. He'd left my ring in the suitcase down in the locker rooms. So he got up and went back. Have you got it on now?
Yeah.
He got up and went back down to the locker room to get the ring. And of course he was excited and he was nervous, and he couldn't find it. And finally, just when he was about to come back without the rings, he was about to come back. Well, he found them and he had them in his pocket.
All the time?
Yeah, he had them in his pocket. So anyway, from being the first ones in, we were the last ones then to on the roll for the sessions, you know. Mm-hmm. And of course, Salt Lake Temple then was live, and they only had the one session, and it took you nearly all day. And when we got down into the bride's room, the matron said, "Where's your mother?" And I said, "She's home." And he said, "Didn't you invite her?" And I said, "No. She couldn't come anyway. She takes boarders, and she couldn't leave. But she went with me to get my recommend." And she says, "Well, where's your husband's mother?" And I said, "She's in Spanish Fork." "Well, why didn't she come?" I says, "We didn't invite her." And she said, "Why didn't you invite her?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know why we didn't. We just never thought about inviting anyone." And she says, "Oh, you poor little thing. I'll be your mother." And she put her arms around me and kissed me, and she took the best care of me and took me through. And I didn't have I had to rent my temple dress or temple clothes that day. I didn't have a bride's dress or bride's bridal veil or anything like that. Only what I rented in the temple. So she went down and picked out the best she could for me and helped me get them on and things like that. And she took care of me all the way through the session then until it was time to get it. Mm-hmm. And when it was instead of like we go to separate, like we do now, to go to separate marriage rooms, you just lined all up. There was a bench right in the celestial room there, in the front, and the couples sat on the bench, and there were 20 got married that day, and we were the very last ones.
You were the very first ones and ended up the very last.
I landed up the very last ones. And Joseph Fielding Smith was he was Elder Smith then, but he was later president of the church, you know. Mm-hmm. And he married us, and he gave one lecture to all of us, and then he just individualized it a little bit when we get up to our turn at the altar. Well, Pat memorized what he'd said to the other people, and so when it was our turn to kneel at the altar, and when he said, "Now you may kiss the bride," Pap just gave me a little peck, and it just went right like that, just past my, just barely hit me on the end of the nose. And uh, President Sir Elder Smith said, young man, I can't marry you if you can't give her a better kiss than that. He said, now I'll give you another chance and you can try it again. So Earl gave me another peck. It wasn't very much better than the first one was. He just pecked me right quick and that was it. But anyway, we've always...
Well, you had a train to catch, didn't you? You had a train to
Yeah, so the session, you see, lasted all day, and the train left at 6 o'clock. And we didn't get out till after 4. And the time we got back down into and got our clothes changed, and our suitcases, and got down to we had to run part of the way to get to the depot. And we were both of us starving. We hadn't had anything to eat all day. And on West Temple, on the way to the depot, there was 2 or 3 little funny Chinese places that were just kind of like cubby holes in the wall. And we dashed in one of them. And Earl said, "What's the fastest thing you can give us to eat? We haven't got time to wait for a menu. Just whatever you got ready." He says, "I'll give you a chicken pot pie." And he brought out a hot chicken pot pie about that big a piece, each one of us. Well, that was the best meal I think I've ever had. I can still remember how good
You were starved.
I was starved. I was just weak starved. And Earl was hungry too. And so then we had to we had to walk to the depot and carry our suitcases. So we didn't have any time to get on the train.
Just run.
Just run and get on the train. And Earl had made arrangements to have his operetta out and have it over with before Christmas. And so he didn't ask me if I wanted to go down. He wanted our wedding to be a surprise. And he didn't. In fact, he didn't want me to go. He never even asked me to go down. And
but it's a good thing you didn't let Joseph Fielding know that, or he really wouldn't have married you.
And he said, well, I guess he told Wally, or he asked Wally if he'd meet us at the train the next night and pick me up. And so when we pulled into Provo, here's Wally sitting there with the little buggy waiting to pick me up, and Earl just handed me off the train, and he handed me. Wally came to the door and helped me down. I don't think Earl never even got off on the train because it just stopped for a minute or two.
Set your baggage off, huh?
Set my baggage off, and he was gone and we were gone. I went back to my mother's and stayed.
How romantic.
Huh?
How romantic.
Yeah, I went back to my mother's and stayed. Well, Earl came back up after the operetta, but that, see, it was the night before Christmas. Or, yeah.
So it was a week.
And,
Nearly a week.
Nearly a week, yeah, and so Mother and I had cooked dinner, and of course I didn't do very much on it. Maybe I peeled some potatoes and things like that. But Mother cooked a beautiful dinner, and it was Christmas Eve dinner. And we invited Earl's mother and father and Grandma Atwood. I don't think we invited Uncle Jake. I don't remember him coming. But we invited mainly Earl's family and Earl's friends for our wedding dinner. So we had we had Grandpa and Grandma Beck, and I don't remember whether Nora and Vera were there or not. They likely were, but just little kids. And Grandma Atwood and Anna, or both of Earl's old girlfriends. We invited Anna and Ora Markham, and they were there. And
That's wild.
Uncle Al Straw and his wife.
You should have invited some of your BYU boyfriends.
I didn't invite anybody. we had Uncle Al Straw, and I don't know why Rosetta Fulmer didn't come, but she wasn't there either. Just Uncle Al and his wife.
Who was Uncle Al Straw?
Well, he was Mother's brother-in-law.
Oh, all right.
Aunt Hattie, Mother's sister, just older than Mother, married Alma Strawn, and she had creeping. They called it creeping paralysis. I don't know what they call it now, but she was an invalid before she died,
Okay.
and then he married Mrs. Stubbs, and so it was Mrs. Stubbs. It was the second wife.
That was there with you.
That was there with Uncle Al. Mm-hmm. And then we had my brothers and sisters and the Borders. All of the Borders were our guests. But that was one of the nicest dinners. I can still remember. Mother, and now this was in December, middle of December, and fresh fruit wasn't plentiful like it is now. But Mother had taken a little round of pineapple, canned pineapple, and split a banana. And the bananas weren't very big because they were only about that tall, a half a banana. Mm-hmm. And then she put a marshmallow cherry, a red marshmallow cherry on a toothpick and stuck it down so it looked like a candle. And that was real pretty. She put on she had nice linen. She had some nice linen. But our wedding china was the same dishes the Borders used, the same silverware the Borders used every day. And but anyway, we had a good dinner.
This was a period of time right through then that things were real lean for your family, weren't they?
It was real hard for Mother to make a go of it, and of course.
So to put on a nice meal like that took some doing.
It took some doing, and it took some, and see, Dad wasn't home, and so she was supporting the family alone then. Dad left he left in October, right after we moved into that big house. Went down to take care of his mother and dad, and so he was still down there. And I wrote and asked Dad if he could help us any, and he sent me $25. And I don't remember what we used it on, but I remember he sent $25 for a wedding present and to help out. And I'll just tell you one or two of the presents we got, because I had them for quite a long while. Grandma Atwood gave us a gray granite dishpan.
Yeah.
About so big around.
I know what they look like. I remember those big old gray granite.
Gray granite dishpan. Mm-hmm. And Uncle Al Straw gave us a pretty picture that I kept, and I had until just the last few years. It was called The Long Ago Sweetheart. It was the sweetheart. It was now and 50 years from now is what it depicted. And I put part of that in that little book. It's a little green book, little blue book down there that I gave Earl when we'd been married 50 years. And You remember that Haviland China little chocolate set? I don't know. No, you wouldn't remember.
I don't.
One of the boarders gave us a little Haviland China chocolate set, and that was the only really nice present we got. Somebody else, I don't remember what Grandpa and Grandma gave us, but and I don't remember what any of the others gave us. Somebody, I think, gave me an ironing board, but I'm not sure. But we didn't get enough presents to get excited about. And I remember Uncle Al Strauss saying to Mother, "Pearl, this is one of the best meals I've ever eaten, but you left the coffee out." And Mother said, "Well, couldn't you enjoy a good meal without coffee?" And he said, "Well, yes, it was a good meal, but I missed the coffee." And so Earl stayed there. Of course, he stayed there the rest of the time until we went back down for the first of the year. But
Stayed the Christmas holidays there.
yeah, I stayed the holidays. But our first night together, my wedding night, was in my mother's front room, and she had a black leather couch that came with the house, and it made down into a bed. So my mother's front room, or the parlor, was our wedding suite, and the black leather couch was our wedding bed. And there was
someone trailing through constantly at all the borders.
There were there was at least 2 rooms, or 2 doors into the room. So it was a riot around there. Everybody laughing about the brides and the bridal suite. Well, Earl
Now, tell us, just for the sake of all of us that are so spoiled with 2 or 3 bathrooms.
You what?
All of us that now have 2 or 3 bathrooms.
Oh.
You had one bathroom with all those borders since.
Well, yeah, I don't think there was more than one bathroom. I don't know.
How many borders? About 8 or 10, weren't there?
Mother had 8 or 10 boarders, yeah. When she had students, and then when she had men, she could put students, a couple or 3 of them in a room together. But when she had men, she just had the individual, and sometimes she had a man and his wife that stayed there. But she never had more than 6 or 7 boarders when she had men.
Mm-hmm. But then she did the cooking for them 3 meals a day, didn't she?
No, she sent them a lunch. The boarders, the men,
Take a lunch.
Take a lunch.
But she fixed breakfast and dinner and fixed them a lunch.
And fixed them a lunch. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I know she didn't have as much as she wanted, but they never complained, because they always said that Mother fixed the best meal, so then if that stayed at any place they'd stayed. And so she didn't have much trouble keeping boarders, but you can imagine, in the middle of winter, no vegetables or fruit or anything. It'd be kind of slim picking and hard to cook for that many men. I don't know how she did it. I just marveled how Mother took care of those guys. But
okay, now go on.
Well, I'm going to tell you about her. So well, I cut my wisdom tooth that night, or that weekend too.
Oh.
So So right after that, I was sick most of the week that Earl was home. But,
You got smart.
Yeah, I got
Got your
smart.
wisdom too, huh?
We didn't want anyone to know that we were coming down to Levan, and so it was going to be a surprise. Well, let me back up just a little bit. My wedding dress
Okay.
was,
And you've got a couple of pictures there you want to show.
well, I don't know. If I had it right quick, I'd show you my wedding dress, but I don't know where it is. But it was a blue crepe, and it came ankle length, and then it had a panel, a beaded panel on both sides, and that the
Now,
skirt.
is this it?
No, that's my suit. I don't remember seeing that picture of that. The skirt was mid calf, and then the two panels that hung down the side were ankle length, and they were beaded with red and black beads, and then there was red and black beads around the neck and around the cuffs of mine. And the sleeves are about mid-length like this. And Mother said she wanted me to have a nice dress, and she said it's something you can wear for Sundays and best, because she says no telling when you'll get another one. And that was my best dress for, I wore that for a best dress for a good many years. But
Now, what's this dress right here?
this is, well, that's the first button dress I ever had. And we're a little bit. Well, I'll show you these. Now, Ruthie's brought it up. This was a picture that I had taken for my engagement picture, and this was the dress was a burnt orange, and then all of this embroidery work around here was in kind of a cream color. I never liked that picture too well, but Earl liked it.
I like it. I think it's a cute picture.
And
Go back the other way.
I don't think I've got a picture just in that dress. You can see the beading around the edge there. This is our wedding picture. And this is Earl's picture. When he graduated from high school, he didn't have a special picture taken for his wedding, but one of these is his wedding, and one of these is his BYU picture. Now that's all that I have there.
Now show us that other
This
right
one?
there.
Well, this is when I was pregnant with
Oh, I'm getting you ahead of things.
yeah, you're getting me
All
ahead
right.
of things.
Okay, going back to.
Okay, well, so we wanted to be to surprise everybody, and I don't know, somebody had, I believe it was the bishop, saw us on the street just as we came out of the temple, and so he went back and told him that Earl was married.
The Bishop of Levan?
Yeah, Bishop, I can't think of his name, the lyric we always called him. But he went back and told him that we were married, so it really wasn't any surprise. But Earl thought he was pulling off a good surprise. Does that need, does that
All
show?
right.
Okay. Earl thought he was pulling off a real good surprise. But when we got down there that night, it was the New Year's I believe it was New Year's Eve. It's New Year, they were having a great big dance. And one of these little fellows in the band, he played the big bass horn. The horn was bigger than he was. And so he was kind of posted to the door to watch out for when we came. And then it was his signal to give the band to play Here Comes the Bride. And so here comes Barney. When Barney saw us coming in, he got all excited and he went running down the floor and did a couple of 3 spin-overs. And they stopped.
You mean he flipped?
Yeah, he flipped. He did a pretty good floor show going down the floor.
He was an acrobat
Mm-hmm.
and did an actual flip.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they stopped the band and played Here Comes the Bride. And that took the wind out of our sails, but it was fun. And so down there they dance. Oh, it'd be crazy if you went home from a dance at 1 or 2 o'clock. You nearly always stayed and had lunch, had dinner or breakfast or what.
All night?
You danced nearly all night.
You're kidding me, Mother.
No. I always had it.
And our curfews were 12 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm telling things I shouldn't, aren't I?
And they danced all night long.
Well, they didn't dance all night. They danced till after midnight, and then they'd stop and have a big meal. And then they'd maybe dance after that.
Oh, my. Okay.
And, well, Earl had made, there was a Jackman family, Jackman. I guess it's Jackman. I'm not sure whether it's Jackman or Jackman. But he made he rented the upstairs. Their upstairs. They had a 2-story brick home down on the south end of Levan, and about 2 or 3 blocks from school. And it was upstairs bed. It was the upstairs bedroom, and there was an old coal stove in there. But and there was a coal cook stove in the kitchen. But the kitchen and the bedroom were separated by a hallway. And I can look back at it now and appreciate it. It was beautiful furniture. Beautiful antique furniture, and the dresser had marble slabs, beautiful marble and beautiful mahogany woodwork, or wood, solid mahogany. It's beautiful furniture, but oh, it was cold. And it looked cold, and up there in that upstairs bedroom with no heat, it gave me the chills to walk in there. And the convenience house was about a block south of the house, and it was, when we got down there, it was snow, and there was snow on the ground. So when you needed to go to the bathroom, you just put on your slippers and went hiking as fast as you could go down.
A block?
It was a half a block. It was way out in the lawn. And being newlywed, I was awful prudish anyway. And so I get up and go down there and just freeze to death. Get back into bed and you'd nearly freeze to death. And we used to put we used to warm the flat irons and wrap them in a towel and put them in our bed because it was cold. And I can't believe that I was this ill prepared for marriage. I'd worked all the time, and Mother'd always say, "We need the money more than I need your help." And so I never learned to be as good a cook as Mother was. I never learned to do very much. And this woman that rented their place to us had been married a couple of years, and she, I don't think was very happily married, but they stayed married all the time. But she always seemed sad to me, and her husband had always joked. He'd say, when Thelma'd make hot cakes for breakfast, he'd give the dog the first one. If the dog wouldn't eat it, then he didn't.
Oh, gee.
And so I was kind of timid about what we were going to do, but Thelma was real good to help me, and especially with the washing. And you know, in those days, you boiled your clothes. You boiled your white sheets. And so she let me use her boiler downstairs and her washer. I don't know how I'd ever gotten through that. And she'd help me get them out and get them on the line. And she helped me some with learning to cook and like that. But I don't know how Earl ever survived my first month or my first year or two cooking.
I knew he found a cold weenie.
Oh, boy. It was disaster. My dad said I couldn't boil water without burning.
Now, come on, Mom. Quit underrating yourself. You're a good cook.
Well, I am. I learned in a hurry. I learned a lot of my mother's secrets from someplace. But it certainly wasn't from practice at home. But anyway, that first year we stayed down there 4 years. And they were fun years. Every year we stayed in a different place. When it looked like I didn't think we didn't think we were gonna have any children, and the guys down there were teasing me all the time. And if I get on the scales or anything, they'd say, "Are you pregnant yet?" Boy, I got mad about that. I wasn't very good at taking that kind of joke, because I thought it was none of their business all the time. But anyway, when one morning I'd made a coconut nut cream pie, and in the morning I made it for supper, and it was good. I'd learned something in that 2 years, and I woke up and the pie was just going around the room like this, and I said to Earl, and I started to throw up, and I said, "I must be poisoned on something," and Earl said, "That brandy we had for breakfast must not have been good." Well, I was sick the rest of the day. When he came home from school at noon, I was still sick and still throwing up. I was still seeing that pie go around, and I said, "I wish you'd throw that pie away." And he took that pie out, I guess, and ate it and got it out of my sight, because I thought that was what was making me sick. So that went on for 2 or 3 days, and every time I'd have to lose my breakfast or heave and toss and lose something, then Earl made me a bowl of oyster soup.
No. Oh.
And every time I'd throw up, he'd cut the oysters in two, so it got down to where I was having a little bit of warm milk, hot milk with a half or a quarter of an oyster in it.
Hey,
A little bit
the
of,
smell of an oyster would be too much.
well, that was what Earl was
So you
trying.
cut your meals in half to hit you better.
Yeah, he
Cut them for port size.
he kept thinking if I didn't eat very much that I'd get over it.
Mm-hmm.
So about the third or fourth day, he went over to the old lady Jackman, and she was a midwife. And he says, come over and see if you can tell what's the matter with Eileen. She's been sick for 3 or 4 days, and she can't keep anything on her stomach. And he told her what he was doing, and she came over. She came over, and she says, that isn't poison brand. She's pregnant. Well, anyway, Earl asked her what she should do, and he says, well, she says, I'll fix her a good meal. And
Stop starving her, huh?
yeah, she fixed me a meal with some potatoes and vegetables and some kind of meat. And then she put a plaster on my stomach, a mustard plaster on my stomach to settle my stomach down so I could keep.
Kidding. A mustard plaster.
Put a mustard plaster on my stomach to settle my stomach down so I could keep my food down.
Oh, why?
Well, that didn't work too well. And I'm still getting sick, and Earl called Mother, and she said, bring her home. So when I got up to Mother's, in about 2 weeks of that kind of treatment, I was so weak I couldn't walk. And I stayed to Mother's for about 3 weeks or a month. And she, of course, it took a little while for the morning sickness to get over. But I got my strength back and got where I could handle myself, and then I went back down to the van.
Did Grandma put mustard plasters on
No,
you, too?
Grandma didn't put a mustard plaster on my stomach.
Oh, geez, that's unreal.
But that was in 1924, and Erle was born the 3rd of November 1924. And of course, right up to, I was sick most of the time, but about the 7th month then I started feeling better. And so we thought we had the world by we thought we had everything in the world then. Earl was a cute little fellow, and
I thought we had a picture of Earle when he was a little baby.
we had,
Just got that one.
yeah, there's one right in there with it's Beck for there. Right there.
There.
Okay.
All right, show Earle's baby picture. This is your firstborn, huh?
Earle was born the 3rd of November 1924. This is when he was 7.5 months old. And now, if our babies now don't sit up by the time they're 6 months, we start wondering if they're all right. But he just was sitting up then by himself. And this is when he was a year old. And that little outfit we had on him is real. We were just real proud of that, and we thought he was the cutest thing in the whole world. And when he was a year old, we were over to school one day, and he had this little outfit on that he's got here. It's a little brown plaited wool. And he, I guess, fell down in it and found it didn't hurt him. So we were over to school, and he took off walking. And he found out that he could walk, pick himself up and get up and go again. So he ran up and down those corridors, that school corridor, for two or three times when he first started walking. What I should have pointed out was that was when Erle was a year old. That was his birthday that we were over there. so he started to walk, and he never crawled or anything. He just ran every place. Then from the day he was a year old. While we're on the van, I thought you might be kind of interested in some of the old time dances they used to have. I mentioned the old time dances up at the Panguitch Lake, and my mother and dad used to take us to the dances, and we'd dance with them. We learned to dance with my mother and dad up at the Panguitch Lake, and then again out in Roosevelt. It was a family affair. If one went to a dance, the others did. And so when we got down to the van, they had all these old-time dances. And I'm sure it was every month, if not more often, that they'd have a community dance. Everybody would bring some food, and though it was all Mormons, they all drank coffee, or nearly all drank coffee. They'd have great big huge pots of coffee. And we danced till midnight, and then take a break and have food, and then dance again till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And everybody took their babies. I took her lay in this buggy. It's a real nice baby buggy that we had. And they had a little room off down to the end of the dance hall. I guess somebody kind of kept track, because there was usually somebody that had a baby awake. And if your baby would wake up, you'd go take care of him and put him back to bed and put him back to sleep and go out and dance again. And I particularly had fun because I knew quite a few of the old-time dances. I knew more of them than Earl did. And we danced the mazurka, and put your little foot in.
Now show us, put your little foot.
Yeah. No, I'm not that agile today. And,
oh, come on, Mom.
And the rye waltz and the Black Hawk waltz, and the old, well, they called it, it was a form of square dance, but they'd waltz in and out of the grand square. And I had to be taught that. I didn't know that one, but I enjoyed that. And it was fun to dance with all those old guys that wanted to show you a new dance. Because if there was one that we didn't know, well, then they took paid particular attention to see that we learned that dance, that Earl learned it and that I learned it, and that we could dance it the next time we came to a dance. So we had fun down there, and it was a lot of fun.
Now, I don't know what the Black Hawk cry is at all, or...
Well, the Black Hawk waltz,
Mm-hmm.
it was the waltz, but it was set. It had a set pattern.
Oh.
And the rye waltz had a set pattern, and they had a set pattern to coming through the rye,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a set pattern to Auld Lang Syne.
I remember coming through the rye.
Yeah.
We used to do that down the vineyard.
Well, I'm sure Pat did a lot of those old dances in his school down the vineyard. Turn it for a minute.
Back. Now, what are we talking about?
Well, we're talking about about Earle when he was a baby.
My dad, Earle?
Yeah, your dad.
Hi, Cheryl. Hi.
And when we lived in Levan, and I was just telling them about the parties we used to go to, and we just showed a picture of Earle Jr. We used to call him Juji then. And
I didn't know that. Juji?
Juji. Don't tell him, he won't love you if you do.
I'm going to.
He well, one day, in this same little suit that I showed you, he came, he decided he was going over to school. He was just about a year old, maybe a little bit older than that. And he went under the ditch. And he got all muddy. He got mud from head to foot. And he crawled through the ditch and walked. It was about 2.5 blocks over to school. And one of the kids saw him coming. And they picked him up and brought him up to Earl. And I was out hunting him. I was frantic.
Now, how old was he?
He was just a little over a year.
Oh, so he could just barely walk.
And, yeah, just running to walk. Well, he was walking good, but he crawled under the ditch and got this mud from head to foot. And that cute little suit was just, well, I had to wash it, and I don't know whether it ruined it or not. But what Ruth wanted me to tell you about was about the same time he was out playing, and a little whirligig, you know, a little
Whirlwind.
With the wind.
little whirlwind came along, and it was quite strong. It just picked him up and carried him for nearly a block
Oh, you're kidding.
and set him down on the barbed wire.
Yeah.
Oh, that scared us to death.
He hung there till you got to him, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he was just
Well,
he was hung up.
He was hung there. He just hung there till we
And
got
big
to him.
hang up, huh?
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll talk to Cheryl now. Do I have any pictures I want to show of you yet? Or will we
I
go
don't think so.
over to there?
Oh, we aren't to there. You're still at the van.
Well, we're going to leave the van right now. I don't have a baby picture of you.
Maybe I was never a baby.
Huh?
Maybe I was never a baby. I was born in Provo.
Yeah? But I don't have any baby pictures of you. Did we show any older pictures of Early, or do we want to show them now?
No, just go ahead with, and we'll work them in as we go.
Well, I was just gonna leave the van now. We showed these baby pictures of him in the van, and then and then how'd it be if I'd say, we stayed in the van for 2 more years. Then in the fall of 1926, Earl got a chance to come move to Pleasant Grove and take his place in the Pleasant Grove High School as music supervisor. Was that okay?
You're on. It's done.
Well, okay, then I better. And so we got a chance to be music supervisor.
Now,
And
didn't you live in Provo at all?
no, we
Okay.
never did. Well, I'll back up just a minute. In the summers when we lived in the van, in the summers we'd go to Salt Lake, and Earl worked for an auctioneer up there, and a used furniture man, and I think I've mentioned a time or two that Earl took woodworking in college and taught woodworking out in woodwork and cabinet making and stuff out in Duchesne out in Roseville. And so in the summertime we'd go up to Salt Lake, and we lived up there for 4 different summers. And Earl worked for this Jenkins auction company and used furniture company, and he'd refinish their furniture, and then Jenkins would take him out whenever they'd have an auction. He'd take him out with him, and Earl worked as a plant, a plant. If there was something that Jenkins wanted to buy for the store, or he wanted to buy, he wanted to keep, or if he thought it was going too cheap or something.
Yeah, if they didn't want it, they wanted it to go a certain price, then he would set the price until it got to that, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And Earl would be his plant man. And we got several nice pieces of things that way. I've got that blue china set that I got that way.
Mm-hmm.
That I gave, and I've given 1 or 2 of the kids, and I've got 1 or 2 others want one of them. And the summer that, one summer, we lived in a different place and different wards, and we made different set of friends every summer that we were up there. And then the last year we were there, my dad came back, and he was working some with Jim Henry, and he was selling insurance, and he was also doing a little real estate, and that was when Ironton was first. They had started Ironton up down the old Ironton blast furnace, and they used to make iron down there, and my dad bought there's kind of an idea that everybody was going to rush for some of those hillside lots, and it'd be a real boon. Well, my dad was selling those lots, and in order to help him out a little bit, we bought a couple of those lots. And then after we got them, we didn't know what we were going to do with them. And so there was a real estate agent up there got a hold of us, and we traded the lots for a down payment on a house on 212 B Street. Do you remember that old house?
I don't remember the house, but I remember.
It was a nice looking house up on the avenues on B Street, but there was no driveway there. You had to carry the coal in. They'd have to carry the coal in sacks, and everybody had coal stoves, coal furnaces. Well, anyway, we gave a down payment. We turned these lots in for down payment and thought we were going to be in the real estate business big. We thought we were something for a little while, but that turned out to be a real poor thing.
Well, now, why did you go to Salt Lake when he was teaching here?
Well, we didn't when he was teaching here. That was before we came to Pleasant Grove. That was when he lived in Levan.
Oh.
And we went up there for 4 years, 4 summers. We were in Levan 4 years.
And during the summer you come to Salt Lake?
And during the summer,
okay.
we were up in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And it was the last summer we were there that we bought this property on B Street.
Okay.
And we got the guy that sold it to us helped get it rented, but it turned out to be a disaster. And more money than we didn't want to pour money into keeping that house, keeping it up and keeping it rented. So another good business principle, I'll tell you, we just let it go back. We didn't take out bankruptcy, but we let it go back, and we lost our 2 lots.
Mm.
But we didn't take out bankruptcy. We just figured it was more than we could handle and a very poor move, and so we just pulled out from under it. We never did get sued or anything, and I guess no, we'd got a suit slapped against us for doing something like
Yeah,
that.
you could have done default of contract.
Yeah, we could have had lots of trouble over it, but that was the end of it.
He probably figured he got a good enough deal.
Well, I don't know what the old guy did, whether he ever got any money out of the lots that we sold him or not. But anyway, we just chalked it up to experience and forgot about it. And in September of 1926, we moved to Pleasant Grove, and Earl came in as music supervisor of the Pleasant Grove schools, and that meant the high school and the junior high and the elementary grades. He had to supervise the music, and then he taught band and orchestra and ladies' glee and male glee and chorus. in the high school. And then every year he put on an operetta. And he put on some real good operettas. The first one he did was Schubert's Rosamund. And he usually had the support of the town. He didn't always, he always had the support of the town, but quite often he went outside of the school for some of the main characters, the main voices. But he had some good voices in school, and he put on some beautiful operettas. And the first place home we moved into when we moved in Pleasant Grove was Swenson's live there now. It's in the 5th Ward now, and it's that little house that was Newman's then, little house back in the lot quite a ways, right next to Roy and Ava Smith. You remember? Do you know which place it was? They used to decorate out on the lawn slope.
Oh, that little white house that Barnhart's had.
Yeah.
Oh, on
It's
let's see, what is it?
It's about first or second south it's about second south and third east.
Second east. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Well, that was our first home. And we lived there for, I guess, a year, maybe a little bit longer. And then we moved over in Lou Alpin's place. And he had the mortuary right beside of it.
Now that's
That's
opposite where the mortuary.
Yeah, that's opposite where the mortuary.
Okay, that's down on the corner.
That's
opposite to Purple Turtle.
right.
On the northeast corner there, where
Yeah.
Jimmy D. Smith is now.
Yeah, that's where. But
Okay. And that was the mortuary.
no, that was.
They had a little home in there.
That was Joe Alpin's.
Okay.
And then just the roadway, and then that little building to the side was where he did his mortuary business and his casket house.
Uh-huh.
And Ern used to help him in the daytime or at night or after schools like that. He helped Joe quite a little bit and Lou with the undertaking when he'd have a little bit of spare time.
Now both of them, Joe and Lou, were here.
Joe and Lou lived here then. Lou lived across the street.
And they were both in the
Yeah.
mortuary business.
But we lived in Joe's house.
Okay.
And in 1926, we were still living there. We were still living there when Frank died. You were about a year old. We were still living there about 1928. We were still living in Joe Alpin's place. And on the 27th of 26th, your birthday is 26th to 27th.
26.
On the 26th of June, or of
September, I was born.
in the 26th of September, 1928, Ruthie was born. And we'd been here 2 years then. I want to tell you a little bit. Ruth was born over in my mother's home, and she had lived she lived in another place.
Grandma Prince had.
Yeah, Grandma Prince had lived in another place, but then she moved back to this old Johnson place on 287 North 2nd East, and that's where you were born. And I remember real well the night before you were born, Mother and I, or the day before, we peeled peaches all day, and I guess we must have had 15 big roundish pans of peaches, and Clingstone peaches. They were about so big. And Mother we just make one split around them. And then I don't know how, I think she doubled their weight, but I'm not going to try to give you how to make peach preserves. But Mother made the best peach preserves.
Yeah, I know she did.
Everybody around would like, if Mother ever wanted to give them anything, she'd give them a little jar of peach preserves. And we had all around the kitchen, 2 ways, stacked up with peach preserve, with the peeled peaches, and the sugar on top of them. And she let them sit that way until they'd absorbed the sugar and the juice had come out. And then the day that you were born, Mother was doing peach preserves. And I was born there in the same house that Mother was living in, or Ruthie was born there in the same house that she was living in where we were married. And Mother took care of me with...
Well, now, wait a minute. You've kind of given them the idea that it was the day before that you did all these peaches.
Oh,
but it was the day, and then that night I was born.
And that night Ruthie was born, yeah. It was the day that in the daytime we did peaches all day. And then that night Ruth was born. And I just stayed. Now, Ruth and Ilene and Pearl were all born to my mother's home. And Gwenny was born. Gwenny's the only one that wasn't born to Mother's. So I stayed to Mother's, and she took care of me and took care of the boarders. And I stayed there for about, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks. You used to stay in bed for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And then you used to feel like you couldn't do anything for a week. So
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. So Mother pampered me, and I stayed there. And she took care of me and took care of Ilene. When they everybody in the family adopted Ilene. We called him Juji then. I had not to tell that because he didn't like it after he got bigger. But everybody just made a fuss over him, and the boarders all made a big fuss over him. And while Frank was still alive, and he made the biggest fuss over him. And Frank was a pretty good tailor. If he had a little bit of material, somebody, old coat or something, he'd make her lay a right cute little suit out of it. He made him 2 or 3 real cute outfits. Made him a little overcoat that was just something special. It would cost you quite a little bit to have bought it, bought. And put a little fur coat on it and had little leather gloves. Boy, he looked like $1 million. And Mother and the boarders kept Ilene looking like a whole lot more like a rich kid than we could have ever kept him, and it was all just hand-me-down things that they made him out of and made it over, But we didn't have too eventful a life. It was mainly work because Earl was working real hard, and he'd have to go to school. Some of his music classes would be before school, and he always had to practice after school. And it was it seemed like there for a while that and I didn't have too good a health. I guess my health was all right, but I was skinny. And that's a little bit later in the ball game, but we didn't. Even though Earl always worked, he always had a job. But it seemed like I mean, he taught school from the time we were married. He taught all the time. He always had a job, but school teaching's never been a real lucrative job. And it seems like we really never had any particular money, and yet we, even though we were going through the Depression, we had more than a lot of people.
You didn't ever go without.
Yeah, we had a job, and we had something that we felt steady about. But there wasn't too much that transpired between then. Ruth was well, there was nearly 4 years between Early and Ruth's birth, and
Well, you lost the baby in between.
yes, I lost one in between, and that was on account of that fall, of that accident of the horse. And anyway, right along about that time, I got real thin. I always used to say that I just couldn't tell which way I was going, only the way my feet were pointed. For sure, you couldn't tell which way was front and back if you couldn't see my feet. One of the women in the school faculty said she didn't she saw me in a bathing suit to something we were in. So when I went home, I got a package. Somebody brought me a package, and when I opened it, it was 2 little bars of soap. And she says, "Put these in your bra." So anyway, I was just real skinny there, and we'd saved, and I thought I was going to buy me a new dress, and I had $10 saved. And Earl went up to the UEA, and I had Ruth was just a baby then, and Earl went to UEA, and he came home one afternoon, and he had 2 dresses, and he thought he was just all excited that he brought me two new dresses, and one of them was a red jersey, and one was a black jersey. You know what jersey is? Just knit jersey. They make you look like a drink of water. Well, I went in and I tried one of them on, and it looked worse than a nightgown. And I tried the other one on, and it didn't do any more for me, so I started to bawl. And then that upset Earl, so I just picked up the dresses and threw them at him.
Oh, Mother.
And so that upset him, and he said, "Well, I'll never buy you another present." But anyway, he relented, and he took them back. And I said, "What on earth made you think that I could wear these?" Well, he says, "I tried them on a girl that was just your size." I said, "Did she fill it out any better?" "Yeah, she looked a lot better in it than you did." He says, I looked all over the store, and I found a girl that looked just your size. And I says, "When you take them back?" He took them back and got his money back on them. But for a long time, that was a sore spot in our lives. And he never bought me a present for a long time after that. With the exception of just being school, working, and going to school, and me just taking care of Ruth and Ilene, I don't remember that we had. It wasn't anything very exciting, but Ruth was only a little better than she used to. You were born in September, and I think Frank died in February. You were just a year and not quite a year and a half. And Earl's sister Vera it seems like we've nearly always had somebody living with us. And Earl's sister Vera was in high school then, and the Leland, where they lived, she had to drive. They had to ride the bus or get some way into the school all the time. So Grandma Beck and Grandpa thought it'd be a good thing if Vera lived with us. I think it was in 1932. We bought a 5-acre fruit farm up on Locust Avenue, up above Locust Avenue. And it was a 3-bedroom little brick home. It was quite a nice home, and we were real thrilled with it. We had all kinds of fruit. We had peaches and pears and apples, several good kind of apples. And I've never tasted apples that taste as good to me yet as they do off that farm up in there. And we had strawberries. We had an acre of strawberries, but it was awful rocky. The soil was real rocky.
You see the rocks there in the picture.
Yeah,
See the rocks around the road.
Yeah, the soil was just real rocky. And so we
Hold it back up and I'll zoom in a little bit.
we tried to operate the strawberries.
See how rocky those roads,
Mm.
the edge of the road is?
Yeah. It's this little fine cobbly rock.
Well, there were some good ones,
Some of them
too.
were pretty good size.
There was a rock pile just up
Yeah.
around the corner from it.
That's right. And that rock pile was there for years. But it was too rocky. But we had strawberries there, and they were real good strawberries. But Kay came over and worked for us for 1 or 2 summers and helped harvest the strawberries in the summertime. And we'd have kids that would be in the operas and in the band and like that. Would come up and work on the farm. And then Earl would let them have the costumes or musical instruments. I think several of the kids told me they never could have stayed in band if it hadn't been Earl helping them, because the parents had to buy the instruments then, and he'd buy an instrument, and then he'd let the kids come up and work on the farm and work it off. And so we had a lot. It was real good, and it's a good experience, but it was awful hard work, real hard work. And Earl he always taught school. So in the summertime, we could do quite a little bit. But in the wintertime, when school started again, and that would be right at the time that you'd harvest the apples and the peaches and the pears. And so Earl would come home at night, and he'd pick, I'd help pick in the daytime. But he'd come home after school and maybe bring 1 or 2 kids with him, and we'd get a load of fruit. Whatever it was, what was over in the season, peaches or pears or apples. And we'd sort them and sort them out and get them in the baskets. And then Earl would load them onto a size flatbed trailer that we had. It wasn't a flatbed, it was about a wagon-sized trailer that had, it had sides up like this, so we could put a bushel of fruit or a couple of bushels of fruit, one on top of each of the other. And Gwenny was, I'm messing right there. Gwenny was born up there, and she was the only one that was born, that wasn't born to my mother's house.
Okay, now go back to your fruit story.
Well, all right. I've got a couple of things I wanted to tell you. One on Pearl while she lived in, while we lived in Provo. So I'll go ahead with this fruit story. But when Gwenny was a baby, when we'd have, a lot of times during the day, I'd hang her in a basket in one of the trees and pick fruit. And I'd hang her in the basket while we were sorting. And then at night, we'd sort them and get them on the load. And then I'd take off the route, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go up to Salt Lake to the farmer's fruit market, the farmer's market. I don't remember now where it is, but it's on the west side and about 3rd or 4th south along in there. And nearly everyone in Pleasant Grove that had a big fruit farm, Herb Armstead and Ben Adams and Jacobs, our neighbors all up in there, and Besants.
Loaders.
And who?
Loaders.
Loader, oh yes, loaders. And they'd all take a load of fruit, and I'd have to get the load out ready, and usually I'd take Ilene and Ruth with me, and sometimes Pearl, and they'd sleep on the. You just make them a bed in the back of the truck, and then
I remember it in the back of the car.
was it the car? Yeah, it was
not
the
a
car.
truck.
No, we didn't have a car. It was the back of the car, and they'd sleep in the back of the car, and they'd take their clothes with them, and we'd get up to the market, and it was all you jostle. It was the main thing when you get up there was to try and get a good stall and get a good place, and so you'd hurry up to get up there and get your stall, and then sometimes I just sell from the back from the trailer, and just back the trailer in. Sometimes one of the neighbors would unload them for me, but Ruth and Ilene, and sometimes Pearl nearly always went with me, and I'd give them some money and let them go over about a block. It was a block or about a block and a half.
Well, it was right on the corner of the market with the
It was a
cafe.
A cafe, and these kids would take the money, and they felt like they were just really. It was real.
Oh, we were big-time hot shots.
Yeah, to go over there and buy your breakfast, and Early and sit up and help Pearl get up in the high chair, and he just really feel like he was doing something, and those kids would come back home just beaming. They'd all had hot cakes, and sometimes they'd take over an apple or a peach or whatever was good and give to the people that were waiting on them in the cafe, and so they really made a fuss over our kids. And our kids had a good time about that.
Yeah, that was fun. That's a fun memory, was going to that fruit market, over to that cafe, because it was always nummy.
Yeah, it was good food. And then if you couldn't always sell your load. Sometimes I'd sell all of it and come home early, and then there'd be other days that we wouldn't have as good a luck, and we'd have to peddle. And more times than once, when we'd be coming home and we'd have fruit left over, I'd give Earle and Ruth and Pearl an apple or a peach or whatever we were trying to sell, and send them down on. They just split up and go both sides of the street.
I don't really remember Pearl going with us much, but Earl and I used to. He'd take one side and I'd take the other.
Yeah. And
you'd just kind of slowly follow us down the middle of the book.
I'd just go down the middle of the road and let the kids go to the knock on doors and ask if they wanted to buy some fruit. And if they did, I think most of them were impressed with the cute kids that were coming to their door, and they were real polite. And they nearly always sold the rest of the load. There was very often that I had to bring anything home, was there?
I don't remember too often, but one time we were up in the east end of Salt Lake and nice area of Salt Lake. And Earl was on one side and I was on the other. And I went to this really nice home, and a big Indian came to the door. I jumped off the porch and screamed and yelled and ran back to the car, and you didn't get me pedaling for a long time. I was scared to death. I knew that Indian was going to scalp me right then.
Well, that's it's fond memories for Earl.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we did that for several years. In fact, I don't know. All the time that we lived up there, I guess that's the main way we sold our fruit, because everybody in Pleasant Grove had fruit, and some of them went out in the Uinta Basin, some of the neighbors, and some of them went down around Panguitch and Parowan and down there. When we were living up on the farm, it was about 1933, early in the spring morning, Lou Alpin, who was Bishop Alpin, Bishop of the ward, First Ward, knocked on my door, or knocked on our door, and the back door. It was quite early in the morning. Earl had just gone to school. And he said, Ilene, are you pregnant? And I was kind of taken back, and I was a little bit put out at him asking me something like that.
Why didn't you tell him?
And so I answered him right back, smart like, no, I'm